When we think of our world, most of us, we don't think of water, we think of land. We think of Earth's surfaces. Yet, in fact, our world is mostly water. Not only what is wet is water. The dogfish is itself 80% water. The lobster, 79% water. The fanworm, 95% water. And seaweed, too, is 95% water. And what of life when it left the water to conquer the land? Grass, like seaweed, is 95% water. The beetle is 79% water. And man? Man is 71% water. Every living thing, plant or animal, depends on water, whether it lives in the sea, in the air, or on land. It must have water for its growth and its life processes. Take away water, and you take away life itself. Why? Why water? Partly because water's chemical structure makes it very close to being a universal solvent, here dissolving a lump of sugar. And partly because of water's physical behavior. Earth is just the right distance from the sun for water to exist normally in its liquid state. Being liquid, with the power to dissolve substances easily, makes water an ideal medium for carrying nutrients to living organisms and waste products from them. Under the microscope, we can see one of the simplest forms of life, the amoeba, a single-celled organism which takes its food from the water and evacuates its waste products back into it. The cell is the basis of all organisms, but, like the onion, most organisms are made up of millions of different cells with different functions. In principle, the same happens here as with the amoeba. Water acts as a medium for transport between the cells. In plants, in the form of sap, it transports nutrients dissolved or suspended in it to and from specialized parts of the organism. In animals, in the form of blood, water again acts as a transport system, carrying nutrients, waste products, oxygen and carbon dioxide to and from the living cells. Blood, here in the foot of a toad, is 80% water. Surrounding all individual living cells is a membrane. It is the membrane which keeps the cell together as an entity, which segregates one from the next in a multicellular organism, and which, in the amoeba, contains it and separates it from the water around it. How does the amoeba, 95% water inside, depend on a water environment? How does water pass through the membrane into and out of individual cells? Two related processes govern the physical behavior of water: diffusion and osmosis. A solute added to water first dissolves. Then diffusion starts. That is, the molecules of solute and water spread themselves out equally, even against the pull of gravity. Solute, concentrated here, moves to an area of lower solute concentration here. Equally, water, in a high concentration here, moves to an area of lower water concentration here, until solute and water are evenly distributed throughout the solution. Osmosis governs what happens to diffusion when a semi-permeable membrane, like the cell membrane of an amoeba, intervenes between two watery solutions of different concentrations. There is still the compulsion to diffuse across the membrane. The solute in high concentration towards the region of lower solute concentration, and the water in high concentration towards the region of lower water concentration. But the membrane prevents solute molecules which are too big from passing through. However, the smaller water molecules can pass through and do freely. So, by the process of osmosis, water passes through a semi-permeable membrane. Osmosis thus accounts for the passage of water into a cell. All cell membranes behave in this way, and there is a tendency for osmosis to take place wherever there is a difference in concentration between the water solutions inside and outside a cell. But how do the molecules of nutrients in the water outside get in? The cell needs them for food. The passage of water molecules by osmosis is little help. If the membrane allowed, it would be the solute molecules inside which, by diffusion, would escape to the outside. But substances do pass into the cell, because the membrane, in ways as yet little understood, actively transports selected nutrients into the cell by means other than osmosis, sometimes by absorption, sometimes by electric charge, as ions. Much remains to be discovered about the cell membrane, but this much is sure. It is responsible for insulating a highly organized system within a cell, and for facilitating the transfer of substances in and out of it. The membrane, here enclosing another single-celled creature, the paramecium, can only do this if there is a watery solution on both sides of it. Unicellular and primitive forms of life have a similar concentration to the water around them, and are examples of a relatively simple existence. As life in the sea became more complex, systems developed which counteract the effect of the osmotic concentration of salty seawater. Different forms of water-bound life evolved. Special mechanisms for controlling their internal salt and water concentrations evolved. Each multicellular marine organism must regulate its intake and excretion so as to maintain a salt and water balance with its environment. Yet seawater has its compensations as a place to live in. It provides a stable environment with no drastic changes in temperature and no water shortage. Water plants also take what they need from the water. the entire surface of the plant being in contact with the source of its water and nutrients. Plants, however, need sunlight as well, and this is more intense above water, on land. More sunlight means quicker growth. So while the land plant retained an attachment to water through its roots in the soil, the stem and leaves grew into the new environment, air. In non-woody land plants, it is water which holds them upright from the inside. Water inflates the cells of the stem and makes it rigid. Water enters a plant through the root hairs. The tiny hair-like projections here grow darker as they take in water which has been dyed blue. The water enters by osmosis. Under normal conditions, there is a higher solute concentration in the cell of the root hair than in the water in the soil. So water enters the cell. Once the outer cell has taken in water, it has a higher water concentration than its neighbor. Water, therefore, flows through from one cell to the next, and to the next. This is a continuous process supplying water to the plant. The force of this root pressure can easily be seen when the stem and leaves are removed. Water still flows upwards. But this trickle becomes 5 gallons an hour in a large tree rising to a height of up to 200 feet, and root pressure alone does not account for all of it. Most of the force comes from the top of the tree. The water is virtually sucked up by evaporation. Leaves transpire water all the time. Like washing on a line, more water is lost on warm and windy days. Up to 99% of the water delivered to the leaves evaporates as water vapor. As water is lost, more is drawn up to replace it. Such a flow helps to carry mineral salts from the soil to the leaves. It is inside the leaf that water plays an entirely different part, a chemical part. For here it becomes one of the raw materials for manufacturing carbohydrates. Within all green leaves, the fundamental food-making process, photosynthesis, takes place. A green substance, chlorophyll, traps energy from the sunlight. Present in the leaf is water, H2O, which is split by this energy into hydroxyl and hydrogen. More light is trapped by chlorophyll, and in turn energizes the hydrogen. This is a continuous daylight process. The hydroxyl ions interact to reform water in the leaf and release oxygen into the air. The energy associated with a pair of hydrogen atoms attaches itself to a carrier, while the hydrogen atoms attach themselves to another carrier. The plant is now ready to produce carbohydrate. But to do so, it must first borrow some of its own reserves of carbohydrate. Carbon dioxide from the air is now needed as the second raw material. Energy from the energy carrier enables the carbohydrate reserves to react with the hydrogen from the first carrier and the carbon dioxide to form extra carbohydrate. Only the extra carbohydrate is used for growth. The rest is transferred ready to take part in the process of photosynthesis again. So photosynthesis is the manufacture of organic materials in green plants by means of light from carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide and water, together with mineral salts, are the substances which the plant requires for growth, and plants are substances which animals require as food. Only plants can build themselves wholly from such simple raw materials as water and carbon dioxide. Without plants, animals could not exist. Land animals, like land plants, achieved an independence from the sea, but not from water. Unlike plants, they had also achieved mobility. They had, in effect, taken their individual water systems with them inside a skin, and an ever-present factor in their lives became water economy. For the countless millions of cells that make up a complex organism, water balance is just as important as in unicellular and marine organisms. The animal's use of water results in a water loss, and this must be made up by water gain. All animals constantly lose water as a result of essential body processes. Water is lost in urine because the toxic waste products of metabolism must be diluted and removed from the organism. Water is lost in feces to facilitate excretion. It is lost as water vapor in breathing out, because lungs have to be lined with water for oxygen to diffuse into the blood. It is lost in sweat. The temperature of air changes more drastically than that of seawater, and a land animal, in order to regulate its body temperature, sweats to bring it down. Each kind of water loss serves some specific need of the body. Water that is lost is made up in two ways. Obviously by drinking and by eating. Even a tough food like a carrot is 88% water. A human being will take in at least 6,500 gallons in a lifetime. Water supports and maintains life. On death, water, from being the universal provider, becomes the universal destroyer. It is the medium in which all organic matter decomposes and dissolves, the medium in which the bacteria and enzymes of decay must operate. If decay is to be prevented, as for instance when food is preserved, the water inside must be removed or frozen, or the water environment changed. While an organism lives, its growth is dependent on water. When its life is over, water is necessary for its decay. Decay breaks it down into the constituents from which it was built to provide nutrients for new growth. Water has physical and chemical properties which provide a stable environment for biological activity. It acts as transport to and from the living cell. By osmosis, it can pass into and out of the cell. It is used in photosynthesis in the manufacture of organic tissue. Land animals match their loss of water with water gain. Water is essential for the unending cycle of growth and decay. Water is the medium for life.